Welcome to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast, where you can learn and be inspired by real-world examples of how technology is transforming businesses and reshaping industries in a language everyone can understand. Here is your host, Neil C. Hughes.
Now, on this daily tech podcast, I love learning more about areas that we don't automatically associate with technology and how it's transforming our lives without us even knowing. And often, this technology is hidden in plain sight. For example, if you're living in Portland, Oregon, you're in for a treat today because I'm going to be speaking to the team at Portland General Electric, which is an energy-based company in, you guessed it, Portland, with operations across Oregon for over the last 130 years. The company serves approximately 900,000 customers with a service area population of 2 million Oregonians in 51 cities. But Portland General has recently accelerated their use of technology to improve customer connection, increase reliability, and maintain the safety of the community under this increasing extreme weather events that we've seen in recent years because of climate change. So I want to learn more about what goes on under the hood, the state-of-the-art AI and cybersecurity measures to ensure that the grid stays protected and secure, especially with the rise in attacks on critical infrastructure. And also how they're ensuring better coordination on resource adequacy and transmission planning, especially during constantly changing conditions like extreme weather events that we're seeing more and more of. And also looking to the future, how they're helping accelerate green energy transformation by intelligently connecting energy systems across the Western power grid. We got a lot to get through, so buckle up and hold on tight as I beam your ears all the way to, you guessed it, Portland, Oregon, where John Kochavatr is waiting to share his story today. So a massive warm welcome to the show, John. Can you tell the listeners a little about who you are and what you do?
My name is John Kochavatr. I'm the Vice President of IT and Supply Chain, and I also serve as Chief Information Officer at Portland General Electric.
Wow, there's a lot we're going to be unpacking there in a few moments, but before we do, I want to learn how you got here. So what's your origin story? Where did your passion for technology come from? And I know you're in the electricity game and power game, so what lit the spark in you, John?
Yeah, for me, Neil, I was a student studying sociology in university, and I did an internship in IT. That's really where I got started because back when I was younger, I was working on a Windows 3.0 computer, and I broke it. I changed the configuration, I broke it. And then I spent hours fixing it, and I was finally able to fix it at school. And that really inspired me. And so that's what got me into my internship. And that's been the start of my entire career.
And it was that path you took that led you to Portland General Electric, which actually serves approximately, I think, 900,000 customers with a service area population of 2 million Oregonians in 51 cities. And one of the reasons I like to record this podcast every single day is get people thinking about areas that they don't associate with technology and how it's transforming just about everything that surrounds us. So can you set the scene and tell the listeners a little bit more about what you do at Portland General Electric?
Yeah, so Portland General Electric is an electric utility that, of course, is based in Portland, Oregon. And a big part of our mission is to decarbonize, electrify, and perform for customers. And what that means is that we're trying to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. And so we were the first, and I believe we may still be the only United States utility to sign the climate pledge, which means that we're going to have zero greenhouse gas emissions by 2040, and then we'll have 80% reduction of emissions by 2030. So it's quite ambitious, and we're going to do that by electrifying things like transportation, while at the same time performing for all of our customers as well.
Wow, it's such an important topic right now. And as I said a few moments ago, I do like to give everyone a chance to take a peek behind the curtain and learn how tech is transforming areas they don't associate with tech. So can you tell me a little bit more about the role of technology in doing all that, and especially in PGE's day-to-day operations too?
Yeah, so Neil, I think one of the things that I've come to learn and appreciate in my 4 years with the company is the complexity of this industry. And it's a mix of, policy, it's a mix of regulations, There's some social dynamics to it, of course, the economic dynamic to it as well. And in the effort to decarbonize, you're looking at different kinds of generators of electricity, right? So you've got fossil fuels that provide reliable energy. And then you've got all of these renewable energy generation assets that I would call intermittent, right? So if you like wind and solar energy, we love it, but the wind doesn't always blow and the sun doesn't always shine, right? And so you've got to manage sort of how you provide electricity to customers. And that happens on what we call the utility side of the meter, where we generate all of the power, but also much more now than ever before on the customer side of the meter. So you've got customers that generate their own electricity. There's mechanisms to manage their load, right? Or how much electricity they use. All of that is required to decarbonize, and it's stitched together with what we'll call a digital thread. So none of this happens without digital in terms of getting to zero greenhouse gas emissions.
And one of the things that put you on my radar was I was reading about your integrated operations center. So can you tell me a little bit more about that and the technology behind that too?
Yes, we're really proud of the integrated operations center that we've stood up. It just opened at the end of last year. And we like to think of it more of a wrapper. So it's not just a building, but it is a wrapper that integrates all of the core operations. And so if you think about the distribution operators, the transmission operators, they all sit in the same building, 2 different rooms, same building. It includes all of our power trading, our power operations trading. It includes our integrated security operations center. So the ISOC also lives within the IOC. And all of that is set in place to enable us to provide reliable, affordable, and clean energy for our customers.
And if we do have anybody listening out there from Portland, what are the technical capabilities of that IOC and what value does it ultimately deliver to both PGE and your customers?
Yeah, so I mentioned earlier about the complexity of the ecosystem in the energy space and whether it is managing how we generate power, right? So we orchestrate when we turn on our power plants and when we turn off our power plants, but also it integrates into the broader market because when the economics make more sense to buy from the open market versus generating our own, we can flip the switches there. Obviously, all of the integrated security, both physical and cyber, happen there as well. And that ties back even into what we call flexible load. So some customers allow us to manage how they use electricity so we can better balance the grid. So all of that happens under the rooftop of the Integrated Operations Center.
And I'm glad you mentioned cyber there because we are living in a period of incredible uncertainty at the moment, and there are a lot of increasing attacks on things like critical infrastructure. So can you tell me a little bit more about how you're focusing on resiliency and how you're preparing for such attacks should they occur in Portland?
Yeah, so Neil, I think that's a great question because part of reliability for us means resiliency. And so Let me talk about the IOC and then I'll get into some of the other work that we're doing, which includes cyber. The way that the IOC is constructed, it's on base isolator. So it's easily one of the most earthquake resistant buildings, probably in the entire United States. And so that was built for a reason because we happen to live near what's called the Cascadia subduction zone in the Pacific Northwest. And so that becomes a natural disaster threat for us that we want to build resiliency for. So that's one component of the building. And then as we think about broader resiliency for our business as it relates to security, with cybersecurity, we've got a team of nearly 60 people now that oversee the protection of all of our cyber assets on the corporate side, as well as on the operations technology side. So that includes things like programmable logic controllers, the human machine interfaces, all of the things that make the grid run. And for us, protecting our customers' information, our reliability is tantamount to the work that we do.
And of course, all the work you're doing here is in Portland. And I'm curious, though, do you collaborate with other regions in your industry, especially if there are things like attacks on critical infrastructure? Do you share ideas and different ways of improving resiliency, etc.?
Yeah, absolutely. And so I think one of the unique opportunities that exist within the utility industry across the world is because of the sort of natural monopolies that are created. There's a lot of collaboration that happens because there isn't much in the way of competition among utilities. And so there is a ton of sharing that happens. In fact, most recently, we had a team go to NextEra Energy, which is based in Florida, which is on the southeast portion of the United States, so that we could learn from them and the work that they've done with hurricane resiliency and maybe take some best practices for, our region in the Pacific Northwest. And then we collaborate with a bunch of external partners that are non-utilities also, so we can adopt some of the best technologies to support our customers.
And I'm curious, are there any trends in the kind of things that you discuss right across the industry? I would imagine you've all got the same kind of problems and the same things keeping you up at night, but equally, are you both or all interested in the same emerging tech trends, etc.?
We are. I think it's maybe a little bit different in different parts of the country. However, I think the theme of decarbonization is something that everybody's talking about. Decentralization, there's a term called the 4Ds that are out there, and digitalization is another one. So as I think about, the common threads, decarbonization is important because where we are starting to close a lot of our fossil fuel plants, I mentioned earlier that these are reliable sources of energy. And we're building more of the intermittent resources. So it's great to keep clean energy flowing through our grid. But if those things that you depend on, like the wind, don't show up, that becomes a problem. And I think that, Neil, you and your listeners, perhaps in the UK, appreciate this. I think the North Sea had some challenges with wind last year, right? And so that results in you having to import more of these fossil fuel resources, and that can really have an impact on economics. And those are things that we talk a lot about as resource adequacy.
And if you did look into your virtual crystal ball, do you think we will begin to rely less on things like fossil fuels and as technology improves, move to cleaner energy? Do you think that's inevitable now? That's the path that we're on?
I do. Or at least on the West Coast of the United States, I think that is the inevitable path. And part of it is that's what customers want. And really, I think that's what countries want as well. And so, as you rightly said, I think part of it right now is getting technology that can operate at scale, and that is economical. I think the technology itself, I think, exists if you had a lot of money. But, electricity is, for a lot of people, an essential service, right? And you can't just raise prices by 2, 3, 5, or 10, because then you start to leave people out. And I think that's one of the complexities of being in this industry, is that you got to balance sort of getting to, let's say, things like decarbonization and balance it with equity for the customers that you serve, which is everybody.
And here in the UK, from April the 1st, they're expecting fuel bills to go from something like £100 or £150 a month to as much as £300, £400 or even £500 a month. Is that a challenge you're seeing in the US too?
I think part of the dynamics that we're seeing, Neil, is different. So I don't know that we're going to see that magnitude of change on our side. I think some of the challenges in Europe have to do with the conflict right now between Russia and Ukraine, where you've got a lot more of your energy coming from Russia, and there's some political dynamics there, of course. Whereas in the United States, a lot of we're net exporters, right, of things like natural gas, which help us in that regard. And to the extent that oil prices are going up, natural gas is a byproduct. And so in a weird way, natural gas prices are going to remain flat or maybe even go down because of the production of oil right now. So I would say that the markets are correlated, but I don't know that they're tied in the same way, given the sources of fuel between our geographies.
Gotcha. And some of the things we talked about, that's a whole other episode for another day. But I mean, what's your grand view for PGE? How will you continue to leverage technology? Because I think technology is a topic very close to your heart, isn't it? So what's your grand vision there?
It is. Earlier you asked me what was my origin story. My career has been, really working in infrastructure businesses, just core infrastructure. And so whether that is transportation or energy, right, healthcare, for me, I think that the future of PGE is really around the ecosystem for our customers. And what I mean by that, it's not just delivering electrons to, the wall outlet in your home, but it's going to be much more threaded into your broader lifestyle. And that includes electric vehicles. All right. And so if you need to charge up, your car because you're going to go on a road trip with your family, Portland General Electric is going to be part of that journey. And as you think about more generation that happens in homes through solar, for example, we're going to be part of that ecosystem, right? For those of your listeners that are thinking about getting batteries in their homes, whether it's through their electric vehicles or just installed in their homes, Portland General Electric is going to be a part of that for our customers. And so our lens has really changed beyond just the meter. And now we're looking at entire families, right? So I'm one customer of Portland General Electric, but I have my wife and 3 kids. And when we send communications, it's going to be more than to just John Kochavatr. It's going to go to Sarah and their kids as well. And I think that helps to create an experience for customers that many energy companies don't necessarily provide. And so that's the direction that we're going.
Awesome. And as you said, we did begin the podcast talking about your origin story, but now's the moment where we've come full circle. I'm going to ask if there was a song, piece of music, movie, book, or anything that has inspired you or accompanied you or helped you in your career. So what would your choice and the story behind it be? And let's leave the listeners on an inspirational note, but no pressure.
Well, thank you, Neil. And as I said earlier, I think you have a terrific list on Spotify and Amazon. I want to give you 2, right? Yep. For a book, one of the most inspiring books for me was Freakonomics by Stephen Levitt. Yeah. And Freakonomics for me helped me be inspired by how we use data to understand the world around us. Because I think there are some common things that we think we understand, but when we collect the data and open the aperture on how we look at these things, it can look quite different and it can change the decisions that we make. So from a book perspective, I love that. And then from a song perspective, I do, and it's on your list already, but I love Eminem's Lose Yourself. And I think part of that is because we have to show up, well, I'll speak for myself. I have to show up every day to do the best that I can. And sometimes, you fall down and it stings and you wish that things could have got better, but then you get up and you keep going. And the other thing that I would add too is there's a great speech that Theodore Roosevelt did called Man in the Arena. And I love that because it's not about the critics, it's about being in the arena. And I would invite all of your listeners to get in the arena in whatever you're doing, because that's what really matters.
Wow, I put a bit of pressure on you there. You did not disappoint. A fantastic speech there. We got the book, we got the song, we got everything. But for anyone listening that just wants to find out more information about everything we talked about today, find out more information about Portland General Electric, or even contact your team, what's the best way of doing that?
Yeah, well, you can get to our website at www.portlandgeneral.com. If you want to connect with me, you can find me on LinkedIn.
Excellent. Well, I'll add those links so everyone can find you nice and easily. But great story. Love chatting with you today. And you've certainly got me thinking about technology in the energy sector, and I'm sure the listeners will be too. But thank you so much for taking the time to share that and your story today.
Neil, it was a pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Man, I just love episodes like this, and I learned so much today. How cool was it that we could just zoom across to Portland, Oregon, and take a peek behind the curtain at the tech of an energy company? So if you're listening in Portland to this podcast, please message me, share with me your thoughts, and I'll give you a shout out on here. And if you've got a similar story to share, or indeed any story, a question, or would like to come on the podcast, let me know. And you can do all that by emailing me, techblogwriter@outlook.com, Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn at Neil C. Hughes, and my website is techblogwriter.co.uk. So I hope you all have a fantastic day wherever you're listening. I'll be back again tomorrow, same time. But until next time, don't be a stranger.
Thank you for listening to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast with Neil C. Hughes. Remember, technology works best when it brings people together.